Well, hello, everybody. Sorry. Um, yes, we're going to talk about now. Who is it that is going to help me today?
Well, Ed, and I forgot your team name officially.
Outdoor Dreams.
Outdoor Dreams.
Nice to meet you.
You bet.
So he and Matt,
Yep.
are just kind of the duo who are at the Southwest office, who they work all over the state. So I think if we just have additional questions that we want to ask Ed, that would, if you're open to that, Ed.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Awesome.
I love it. Thank you very much.
You
Yeah.
bet.
So
I'm going to try and share my slides and see what I have here. Huh.
do you want me to? Let's see here.
Yeah, I'm trying to I'm trying to share my slides and I'm not getting anywhere.
And I don't see that you shared the slides with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, everybody. Let me get here.
Let's see here.
Just seem to be loading.
Do you want to try and share them with me again?
Sure.
Okay. Thanks for your patience, guys.
Yeah.
Yes, no problem.
Yeah, nothing's budging.
I wonder if this is an internet issue and not.
All right, I'm coming. Yeah, I wonder, this has happened before when I've shared it with you on Google Slides and it doesn't show up.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm gonna see if
Here, I've got it. Now I'm gonna. Okay, share. Just talking to you, Dan, while I'm waiting on this. In my selling career, I did okay, I'm sending it, Steph.
okay.
In my selling career, I did a lot with subdivisions in Mequon. I listed, I think it was 5 or 6 subdivisions because my husband's family was all into land development and things like that. So they were developing it and then I'd get the listing for all of them. The largest one was Beechwood Farms in Mequon. That was like 109 lots. That turned into like an annuity. I mean, that was pretty cool. So my experience with doing that and working from the raw land through the development stages and then into the sales, I have that kind of experience. Dealing with builders, dealing with lenders and everything in selling vacant land plots in a subdivision. So, so you have that up now, Steph?
I do. Can you see it okay?
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
See if I can flip pages?
I'll have to flip the pages.
Okay, next
So,
page.
okay, awesome.
What this is, and please, Dan, stop me. Your name is Dan, right?
Ed.
Ed.
Ed,
Right. Please stop me at any time, add in or correct or whatever, because I said, all of this experience I did in the 90s through the 2000s. It was a lot of representation for about 5 or 6 subdivisions in sales. And I did a few raw land sales as well. Okay, go to the next page.
All right.
So just starting off, if you are a newer agent and you have a buyer that decides they want to build or found a piece of land or found a subdivision or whatever, that they'd rather build than look because the inventory is so low. These are the questions that for you to get acclimated and started, whether you've written on a vacant land piece or not, these are the questions I would suggest you open. And then if you have any additions, let me know. First of all, ask them, is this land in an original setting, like a spin-off from a farm property or even a city lot that is being sold? Or is this land parceled in a developing subdivision? You need to know that because your approach to writing the offer in these sites is a little different. Next question I would think is ask the buyer if they've identified a builder. They're working with a builder. A lot of times the builders buy lots in a subdivision and they are the only ones that you can work with if you like that lot. Sometimes builders actually develop the subdivision or a lot. And of course, then they are the only person that you can work to build with, unless you make an appeal with them. What representations come with the land? You need to do a little homework based on what the listing agent is offering. What reports are available? Are there perk tests, compaction tests, hazardous materials identified, any kind of reports like that the builder, developer, owner has performed on the property, especially in a subdivision. Some subdivisions will come with a lot of these tests already performed for you and your buyer. Is the land on municipal water and or waste removal, sewer, whatever? Some of these properties, especially if it's a city lot that's abandoned or that's vacant, but some of these are already tied to a municipal sewer, municipal water. There's a lateral from the middle of the road to the lot line, and then it's going to be the builder buyer's responsibility to take it from the lot line to the site of the property. But most vacant land purchases you're going to be looking at either getting your own well dug, or getting your own waste disposal system added. And that can be a septic tank, it can be a mound system. A word of caution, many properties that were originally listed as perked for septic tanks are no longer. The EPA just sort of washed all that out, and a lot of vacant land needing a septic system are going to probably need at least a mound system or a holding tank system. And they've decided that there are not many septic system available lots left. Are there any other facilities available to the lot line? That's something you're going to fill out in this offer to purchase for a lot. What about electricity? What about cable? What about all the other utilities that might be? If it's being developed by a subdivision, they usually have roads that these facilities or utilities are in, and then they are again brought up to the lot line of the lot that your buyer is purchasing, and then you need to draw that into the site where the house is being built. Are there documents and bylaws for the subdivision? Most subdivisions have to be controlled by a homeowners association, and they will have documents and bylaws on certain things that you could do in that subdivision and certain things you can't do, covenants and restrictions, proposed building review. Some subdivision restrictions can be very strict, you know, where you put your driveway, where you put your garage, how you focus your house, what the exterior of your house can be, all sorts of things. And they range from a very, very, very controlling and specific to very casual. So make sure that you're aware of that. And if there is a homeowners association at that point, make sure that you get a copy of the covenants and restriction documents and bylaws. Ed, can you think of other questions that you need to establish with your buyer on what they want and what they're going to get?
What I will say is, you know, what we focus on are larger pieces of land, not, you know, I'll say subdivision lots. I mean, so my questions, while these are good and some of these questions pertain to what we do, our questions definitely are a lot different because, you know, we're dealing with, you know, large recreational pieces, farmland, you know, larger pieces of property where they're going to put a single family house on. You know, we do go down the road of development properties a little bit, but we definitely don't focus on people wanting to buy a half-acre lot in a subdivision. Now, honestly, that's something that I would refer out to a residential agent.
Okay, interesting.
Because that is not the scope of. I mean, I'm not saying it's not our expertise, but it's definitely not the scope of what we do. We focus on the much larger stuff. So our questions, I have asked questions like this, yes, but our questions are definitely a little bit different.
Yeah, I have done a few of those large private lots. And you're right. I mean, the reason most of us will be writing on subdivision lots or developing subdivision lots. And a lot of that work is already done by the developer. A lot of that work that we're talking about is already there.
Correct.
But if you're buying on a large parcel, like Ed's talking about, there isn't anything there. I mean, they're
generally not.
Right.
You know, so like one question I would ask on a large piece, and it could pertain to this too, depending on how large of a lot it is. What about easements? You know, is there a utility easement? Is there an ingress egress easement for access?
Right.
You know, things like that. That's super important. I actually had a deal fall through about a month ago because an easement was not disclosed by my seller, but it was not disclosed when they bought it, and it just created kind of a mess when I had it under contract and it fell apart.
Well, I had a situation similar to that, and it was in a subdivision. It was an easement in a subdivision for fire escapes. And the seller didn't disclose it either, and it ran right along the north side of the property of the lot he was buying. I mean, those, you can't argue with those, especially in Mequon. They have knockdown fences where a fire truck can actually just roar down the side of your lot.
Yeah, easements are a big deal. And that, you know, if it's not disclosed by the seller, if it's recorded, it will show up on title.
Exactly. Yeah. So go ahead, Steph.
Well, no, I was just gonna follow up more with Ed in terms of like, you know, the clientele, like buyer clientele that you're working with. Are you working with people who are looking then to subdivide themselves?
Matt has 2 listings right now, one in Saukville and one down in Kenosha County.
Okay.
And he really is not on the call. He's headed to Greene County because he does have a couple listings that are people looking to possibly subdivide. You know, he's got 2 under contract right now. One is going to be subdivided. One, he's arguing, you know, they're arguing with the township. But yeah, we'll deal with the other side of it, looking to sell it to have it subdivided.
Okay. So how are you, like, what kind of service or like knowledge base would you need to have to help a client who's looking to do that?
Oh my gosh.
The might
my
be
notes.
another question.
You know, Matt has done these and he'll get kind of crazy and draw out maps, propose like plat maps. You know, it has to get surveyed. You definitely have to go to the local municipality, you know, zoning and planning. Plan on going to some zoning and planning commission meetings or town hall meetings to get approvals. It really is dealing, not so, you have to deal with the seller, but you really have to deal with the municipality and explain to the seller it's gonna cost money. It's not like, okay, you can do it one of two ways: sell it to a developer who's gonna pay to have it surveyed, or the seller already had it surveyed and you're saying, okay, Mr. Developer, come buy it, develop it and sell off the lots. But you still have to deal a lot with the municipality and zoning plan commissions.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
my husband is a developer, he's now retired, with his brother, and they did develop about 10 subdivisions in Mequon and Cedarburg. So even though I wasn't participating in that role, I got my role when they were ready to sell.
Right.
But I certainly have seen that initial search for properties, search for farms, search for different ideas and going from the very beginning of buying the raw land, clearing it, saving the topsoil, all of that, and then all of the municipality agreements that you have to get. And sometimes Mequon was very, very difficult to deal with. And, you know, that would push their timelines way off. And
Right.
like that.
One thing I will add, and maybe you can add to this as well. You know, these landowners that have these development or properties possibly for development, they think they're sitting on a property with oil, gas,
Right.
gold, platinum, diamonds under it. It's not worth what they think it's worth because they don't take into account the cost of development. You know, I think it's about $1,200 a lineal foot right now to develop, you know, putting in sewer, water, roads. So, I mean, that's millions of dollars. So now they got to sell that half-acre lot for even more money just to break even. You know, so a seller has to be realistic as to what their land is really worth. That's why I see a whole lot of expireds of properties for development because it's so overpriced. They just don't understand the development costs that go into it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they bought, my husband and brother bought several farms in Mequon because things were, you know, really starting to move. And then we went into that depression around 1990 or forgot what it was, 89. And people would come up to my husband and say, boy, I bet building is slowed up. And Rick said, no, it's actually stopped. And you know, that was a hard time because they had to hold all these farms in Mequon. They had a lot of land that they owned, but they couldn't move forward and do anything. But you know, it's hard, and you're right. The farmer doesn't realize sometimes transferring that use is very, very difficult and expensive.
We have a question from Tammy. Do you typically need land agreements in place with the municipality prior to a seller? And is that what you mean, Tammy, or do you want to hop
Yeah,
on?
I just wanted to know, because you guys a little ways back were talking about having a lot of meetings and stuff with attending municipality meetings to discuss land use, I'm guessing, when you're buying a large area. And I'm just wondering, do those agreements need to be already hammered down and in place prior to the buyer and seller closing their sales transaction?
There's actually contingencies you can build that are part of the land offer to purchase, to go and, you know, get land use approval, or, you know, just make sure that what their plans are, because they can't really get permits or anything until they purchase the property, but they can go get verbal approval that what they want to do is approved. But there are contingencies, and I know that'll probably come up here in a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really, and what I'll tell you too is depending on where you're at, because I deal with a lot of small municipalities and the townships have very, very, very limited hours. I mean, maybe one day a week for like 3 hours, You know, so it's difficult to get in front of these people, but you have to pay attention to what the municipality hours are. Cause
Okay,
I don't deal with like the city of Milwaukee. I deal with town of Sherman who, you know, they're in the office 2 days a week for 2 hours.
Even Mequon only meets, I think, on land approvals and things like that, twice a month.
Right, and then the zoning planning commission meetings or town hall meetings, that's like a random, they do it like once or twice a month on, say, a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock.
Mhm.
And you have to also usually like weeks ahead of time, contact municipality to even get on the agenda. You can't just show up and raise your hand. You have to be on the agenda.
Right.
With paperwork submitted, and sometimes that costs money.
All right.
How I'm going to do this part, Steph and I both agreed that going line by line through the contract offer to purchase for a vacant land is a little tedious. And for the most part, it's very similar to your residential purchase, offer to purchase form. But there are sections in there that are unfamiliar if you haven't worked with vacant land before. And those sections I have sort of given a English interpretation of what they are. And at the end of this, I can flip up a actual vacant land offer to purchase so that you can sort of see where these are. If you have one, we'll send you copies of these slides and you can refer to those lines back to this. But what I'm trying to do is just simplify what these mean. And as we were talking with Ed, this offer to purchase is adaptable for buying large farms or large stretches of land, as well as subdivision plots. So it covers everything. And a lot of times, a lot of these contingencies or provisions in the offer to purchase for vacant land are not applicable to you if you're buying a subdivision lot. And so we'll just kind of run through this. But vacant land disclosure, there is a property condition report for vacant land, and it's called the vacant land disclosure. And the seller has to fill this out based on what he's aware of regarding the land. So required to be given to the buyer. If you are working with the buyer and you're about to write an offer on a piece of vacant land, make sure you have this vacant land disclosure from the seller. If you don't have it, put it in your offer that you need to receive it within 12 hours or something. But don't submit your offer until you've seen this vacant land disclosure.
can I ask, is it a standard form that WRA requires us
Yes.
to use? Okay.
It's just like your residential property disclosure. It's just missing a couple pages.
Okay, so it shouldn't be a variable form. It should be
Nope.
one particular form they have to fill out.
Yes.
And it's required. I mean, it is like the real estate condition report. It's a state of Wisconsin law. And so is this. It used to be optional. It's now required. Government programs on lines 182 to 190, they talk about government programs. And these are programs such as farmland preservation agreements, use value assessments, conservation reserve program, outlined in these lines, which may apply to buying this land, and especially if you're buying large tracts of land. Seller must deliver all of the terms of the programs. So if this stretch of land is in one of these programs, you have to make sure that you either comply or have the seller get out of the program. Is that right, Ed?
That's correct. So yeah, the ones that you'll run into the most are CRP and MFL, managed forest land.
Right.
You know, a buyer can get out of it, but it is expensive.
Yes. And same thing with farmland preservation.
Yeah.
It's expensive to get out of. You have to buy yourself out of it. But you can remove this land from this program. Mequon, by the way, had a forestry review, and they had what they called, I forgot what they called, certain trees that were special species, trees that were running low on, like shaggy bark hickory and trees like that. that would conserve these trees. And so in Mequon, before you could buy a wooded lot, like in a subdivision, we had it at Beechwood. We had a whole section of forest at Beechwood. The what tree manager had to come out and identify which trees were special and could not be cut down. And that sometimes made a problem, like it was right in the middle of where the driveway was going to go and things like that. But those trees were protected. So under the Conservation Reserve Program, this is something different. This is a state program and it can run for 10, 15 years and just like Ed said, costly to remove. The shoreland zoning thing, if the property is adjacent to the shoreland, it's important you have to make sure that your seller is aware of this because there are obviously many restrictions for shoreland zoning ordinances. They're ordinances with the municipality. Okay, and proposed use, this is what we were talking about. And this isn't necessarily for subdivisions because they've already skipped that point, is obviously for residential homes being built. But if it's a stretch of land, this is an umbrella contingency, making sure the buyer is able to use that property for what he intends. If he cannot use it for the proposed use, he sends a notice with written evidence that he cannot, and it kills the offer. So he's not trapped into buying a whole stretch of land that he can't do with it what he wants to do. I had a client one time that wanted to buy a stretch of raw land, just I think like 10 acres. And he didn't really want to tell me what the proposed use was. And I said, are you going to build a home on it? No. Are you going to build any structure on it? No. It turns out he was one of those survivalists, or they do not paintball, but they did something like that, where they had groups that go out and compete. And he just wanted this natural wooded parcel of land to be able to have those events. Next page, Steph. And these are what we taught now. These are sub contingencies, and these are all lined up on pages 251 to 281 in the offer to purchase. It'll ask you, are these provisions available in the lot that you're wanting to buy? So is the zoning matching the use? Make sure that you as the agent for the buyer are going to the municipality and double checking zoning. Written evidence that the ground conditions match the proposed use. There's a place in the offer that says, does the seller have it? If they do, they share it. If the seller doesn't have it, at the seller's expense, he should get it. And these are subsoil tests. The basis of that is the soil actually going down below where the house will be is comprised of many different layers. There'll be layers of sand, layers of hard clay, layers of slippery clay, water can be in these layers. And when you do a subsoil test, they drill a core all the way down to the depth of where a basement would be. And they're able to see what all the different layers are. So it might look like hard clay right near the top of the lot, but you get down near the middle of the lot before the basement floor, and there's a slippery clay or there's water in there. And that's certainly not good for your foundation. So if that's the case, then they have to make sure that they drill down farther than they intended to dig out the basement, to make sure that it was sitting on a hard layer of subsoil. So you want to be able to see subsoil tests, and if they haven't been tested, to ask for them to be tested. The other thing that you have to obviously have in vacant land purchasing is the POUT system. What kind of wastewater system do they have, or is it proposed use if it's not connected to a municipal waste system? What type of POUTs? It's called POUTs, that is waste treatment system. What's the PO? Anyway,
Forgetting to.
yeah. it is, like I said earlier, it's either a septic system, which is just digging a big hole in the ground near the house, and it all drains in there, and they put bacteria in there, which eats up the waste. That's the old tried true way, but now most EPA standards have that so strict that most land doesn't perk for absorbing septic systems. So it's either a holding tank, which is actually a tank that's built to store the sewage. And in it, it has bacterias and chemicals to treat it. And then it drains out as clean water, or sort of clean water, into the soil. And then a mound system where they actually build a sort of about a 5-foot mound next to the property, and the waste is pumped into the mound, and then the mound is cleaned out every once in a while.
Private, oh, sorry, private on-site.
Private on-site
Yeah.
waste treatment system. Thank you. So those are going to be, and of course they're expensive. They have to be maintained. They have to be kept clean. Some subdivisions will have a community well. They'll have a community waste system, or many of them just have an individual lot well, an individual lot system. If they're large tracts of land, like a large subdivision, it actually isn't controlled by the homeowners at all. It's controlled by the EPA. They do regular testing on the community waste system and the community well, and make sure that it is compliant and clean. But individuals or small land tracts, they will have to be done privately, those tested privately. And here's easements and restrictions. And Ed and I both said these are extremely important in buying a lot in a subdivision or on a tract of land. Asking that none of these will restrict or delay the cost for the use that the buyer is intending. There are typical utility easements that go through land, making sure that they can get electricity from one point to another, or gas and other utilities. And those will be on a thin line right at the edge of a property. And those will be on the plat. When you are buying in a subdivision, you will see the plat, and the plat will also show where the easements are. Then if you are buying a tract of land, you're going to get a survey, and a survey should also show where those easements are as well.
Like a basic survey generally doesn't have that. There's a survey called an Alta survey, which is the really expensive one that'll show that. So the deal I had fall through had an underground utility easement through the entirety of the property, and it was not on the survey. And the reason the deal fell through is because my buyers couldn't build where they intended to build, because it was right on top of the easement. And it was going to cost like $25 a foot to move 13 acres long worth of utility line.
Who would have thought to put it right down the middle of the lot?
Right. And my sellers, because I had both sides. My sellers, when they bought it in November, did not know about that easement either. So they're stuck with it. They actually filed a claim with the title company, but haven't heard yet because the title company didn't search back and find it, and it was there.
Yes. And then approvals and permits. Are there any permits or restrictions required by the municipality or government related to the proposed use? So in your offer, if you're writing for a buyer who wants to build a house on a parcel of land, you add the proposed use is residential single family. Unless you want to do something else, like you want to erect a utility barn, or you want to erect a duplex. Not many duplexes are put on vacant land, but in the city they are, and there are vacant lots in the city that people will want to put down what their proposed use is. So that's up to the seller then to verify that that proposed use can be used on that land. Utilities, and this is part of the offer to purchase. They have little sections where are the utilities located. the electricity, water, gas, sewer. Say there's no water to that lot, so he'll put NA or not available. Some of these utilities are going to be in the road adjacent to the lot. And then it's they will take it to the lot line, and then it's responsibility of the developer or the buyer to pay for that line to go from the lot line basically to the home site. So in the offer, it asks what utilities need to be brought in and where are they, and you fill those out in the offer. So that's why you need to have that information from the listing agent about everything that they know, so that you can fill that out in your offer to purchase. And access to the property. Buyer wants it in writing that the property is not landlocked. Very important. Thank you, Steph, for putting that in. But they can't they can't buy a lot where they can't get to it. So,
Unless there's an ingress egress easement.
yes,
If there's not, it needs to be added.
right. So that's basically, these are the contingencies that you're going to run into when writing a vacant land offer to purchase that are different from your regular offer to purchase. Again, if you have any questions and you're in a situation where you're writing on a vacant land offer to purchase for the first time, give me a call or give Ed a call. This is wonderful to have more sources. Especially if you have somebody that wants to buy a large tract of land or a private tract of land. Because I don't have that much experience in it, but I do some. Consider it a very important part of your business because we are low on inventory. The last time we were low on inventory was the way we got out of it was because a lot of suburbs around Milwaukee were farms. And, going west or going south or going north, there were a lot of farms that the farmers were willing to sell their lands, and developers were then willing to develop them into subdivisions. And you see that in Brookfield, Elm Grove, all those subdivisions, Mequon, Cedarburg, all those subdivisions, Southside, all the subdivisions going down 94. That's what got us out of that low inventory the last time. Right now, we can't really do that as much because we don't have that much vacant land left. And certainly not vacant land left that is easily accessible to downtown and commuting. So this shows additional specific contingencies, what I talked to you about. And then like in the residential offer to purchase, it says all these other things that could affect the property, and make sure that you read over those and if none of those are also affecting the property that you're looking for. So you can get variances for zoning. You can try to do all these things working with the municipality if they don't allow it to be built the way it is. And what Ed and I talked about too, there's a map of the property. There's an Alta survey and a regular survey, or a buyer can get their own survey done. Buyer states in this offer is contingent upon receiving a survey. If the land is in a developed subdivision, then the subdivision is platted. And that's the word you use for a survey of a subdivision. And that lot is therefore mapped. If the land is undeveloped, then this map or survey is important. Read the caution on line 297 to 298. If the survey shows significant encroachments, information inconsistent with prior representations, or failure to meet the requirements stated within this contingency, this offer shall be null and void. And if you run into that sort of a discrepancy, make sure you call me and we can talk it out. Okay, now in financing land, it's changed quite a bit from when I was selling Beechwood, because at that time the Beechwood lots ranged from $90,000 an acre. Well, it was a OGP lot development. But for a lot the lots range from 90 to 300, 250, I think, in the woods. And so most people bought lots with cash and didn't finance them. I did have a lender that would finance the lot purchase, or they could buy a home construction loan that would encompass the purchase of the lot with the purchase or a loan to build the house as well. But financing vacant land depends on the intended use of the buyer. Buying land to construct a home might use a loan to purchase the land, and a construction loan finance the building construction. If purchasing for hunting, agriculture may consider a land loan, which may have higher rates, higher down payment, and a shorter loan term. Buyer may consider using a land contract if seller is willing to finance the purchase. So those are some considerations, but as I was saying, now more people do finance the loan purchase or the lot purchase because they're more expensive. They're not as affordable, like 90,000, when now today they can be up to 500,000 a lot. So, yes, go ahead.
I just have a follow-up question. So like traditionally, if someone's buying in a subdivision, the loan that they're getting, the loan that they're obtaining is covering both the land and the construction of the house.
Sometimes.
Okay.
I mean, they can have a separate land loan
Okay.
because maybe they're going to put off building on it for a while.
Yep.
Okay.
There's really only 2 or 3 banks in the state that will do a loan on vacant land.
Just land.
Just
Okay.
land. Compere Financial and Greenstone are the 2 I use.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it is about a point higher as far as interest. It's about a point higher than residential.
And is the term usually 30 years or?
Yeah, I've never seen it where they've had shorter term. They could do like 15% down, but it is about a point higher.
Okay.
Yeah, there used to be a lot of lenders doing it in the past.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions at this point?
And a land contract that's complicated.
Yeah, and we used to be able to write out our land contracts like we knew what we were doing. We didn't.
No.
Actually writing a mortgage. But now we have to have an attorney write a land contract. We can put it in the offer that the financing is going to be a land contract, but then we need an attorney to actually.
There is a separate land contract form that has to be filled out that you spell out the terms, and that goes to the attorney to actually draft the legal
draft it, right.
document.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All great stuff, you guys. Thanks again. Let's go to the listing contract.
Yeah, I'm just going to briefly talk about the listing contract because it's similar to some of these additional contingencies that the offer to purchase has. But like the listing contract is not as complex. When the agent lists a vacant parcel, the agent will work with the seller to identify the property, excuse me, enrolled in any government or conservation program, like Ed was saying, subject to use value assessment, burdened by zoning, land use, or development restrictions. If the seller doesn't know, you're going to go to the municipality because they know. Sometimes the seller is an old farmer, and he's just had this land and he's probably enrolled in some of these conservation programs or something and didn't remember it. But the municipality will know, but it's your obligation as the listing agent, the fiduciary, to represent your client and know these things. The seller also represents the zoning and the location of utilities. The remainder of the vacant land listing contract does not significantly differ from the residential listing contract. But again, you have a challenge if the seller doesn't know or doesn't have it, or if you have to go in and have it surveyed and you have to get a location of the utilities and all that, that can be very expensive cost to the seller in order to sell his property. And Ed had mentioned that earlier. They don't realize the obligation to have it prepared for sale. And zoning is one of the most important parts. And the last slide, I think, this is the vacant land disclosure report that we talked about. That is similar to the real estate home condition report, the record. So it's a required form. It's sellers responsible for knowing or discovering issues. Really, put your seller to work. Tell him to go find this out if you can.
Yeah.
And again, as I repeated, subsoil and fill issues. Is seller aware of the subsoil conditions that would significantly increase the cost of development? Like I was saying, if the basement lands on a slippery layer, you're going to have to dig deeper, and a more expensive basement. So such as fill, pesticides, herbicides, fertilizer, or low load-bearing capacity, which is what I was talking about. Earth movement, settling, slides. The Beechwood development, it was on 3 ponds. And those 3 ponds were all man-made developed ponds and big. So we had certain restrictions about how far back the home site had to be on those lots so that they were building, excavating in the compacted area of the lot. And that was very important because compaction of lot is critical to the stability of that land. And if the developer hasn't compacted the ground, the lot, that foundation could slip. We had a case where a builder went in for a buyer and was building a land and he wanted it closer to the lake shore. He didn't want to be back where we had proposed the home site. So we started developing closer to the lake and then realized some slipping in his foundation blocks before he'd even finished the foundation.
Wow.
And then turned around and sued us for having a non-compliable lot. Well, that sort of stuff happens, but you've got to be aware of these things. The seller or the developer definitely is aware, but if it's a private owner, they may not be aware of these things. So anything you want to add? Add
Nope,
to this?
nope.
You've been wonderfully helpful. I appreciate it. So,
One thing well, go ahead, I'll finish, I'll say something at the end, go ahead.
okay, well, this is pretty much the end. I was gonna show the land offer to purchase on the screen, but I don't think it's necessary. You have this direction and we'll email these slides to those of you on the conversation today. So you can use it as a reference, and I've referenced the lines in the slides.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
And what I will add, and I'll just plug Matt and our team.
Sure.
I mean, like I said in the beginning, we don't do, we won't represent a buyer unless it's like a friend or family member on like a half-acre lot in a subdivision. But if you have buyers or sellers looking for large tracts of land and it's nothing you want to look, I've never sold a house and never want to sell a house unless it's on 100 acres. But if you have a buyer or seller looking to buy or sell, I mean, we offer a 30% referral for a land listing and 25% referral for a buyer. Buyers cost us money, so we only do 25%. But don't be afraid to just hand it off unless you want to go to local municipality meetings and do all these permits and all this other crap. I mean, this is the stuff that we specialize in.
Yeah, and this kind of falls under reasonable skill and care, right? We want to make sure that we are leading our clients to the best possible resource, the experts, who deal with this every day. So we as residential experts trying to handle this ourselves would just not be in the best interest of our clients. So,
But subdivision lots are pretty well controlled.
Yeah, I don't, right. I consider that like a residential transaction. I mean, yeah, there's stuff, and I get calls. I'm talking to somebody from the Lake Country office right now who has a buyer looking to put an offer on like 5 lots on Lake Okauchee, and it's kind of a mess. And I'm helping out, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't step in and do that one. I'll just assist a little bit.
cool.
Yeah. Well, that brings up that last word of caution I had. When you're buying near water, make sure you do your homework.
Oh, that one is, I don't think they're gonna put an offer in, because I disclosed that all 5 lots are wetlands and in a FEMA floodplain, so I don't think that one's gonna happen. He was not happy when I disclosed that one.
No.
Can I ask a question? I noticed Ed had made a comment about how buyers cost money. And are you talking about those really large land sales that it's expensive or something to
No, the
represent?
reason I say it costs money is like Steph said, we cover a vast majority of the state. So on large tracts of lands, I'm pulling my big UTV 2 hours across the state to show a land. I mean, we don't work in and I'm not trying to knock any residential agents. We don't work in a zip code or a county. I mean, I work, 2.5 hours from home at times. So I mean, if it's not like showing a house, a couple houses in New Berlin. I may have to go show 3 properties in 3 different counties. So it's a lot of time and money.
So he's saying, Tammy, if you were to refer a buyer to him, they would only pay out 25% for the referral.
Right.
Whereas if
Oh, I see. It's
Yeah,
not
if it's-
because you
if
want to
you-
represent them, it's that the referral fee is less because it's more work too.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, but if you have somebody looking to sell a piece of land somewhere, like some hunting or farmland, we'll pay 30%.
It is 30. Got it now. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
buyers run us ragged. It's showing land is a little bit different than showing a house in a city.
buyers run us ragged too.
I know. We go long distances. I mean, we go all over the damn place.
Well, this was fantastic. So thank you both for your expertise and experience, Joan and Ed. Any other questions, you guys?
No, it's a lot to take in. It's great information.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Well, give me a call.
Thank
if
you.
Have questions with a listing or an offer contract. I'll help.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks.
Bye-bye.